As the whispers consumed me and my body began to dissolve into the thing beneath the division, the chamber walls pulsed harder, faster, as if the entire place was preparing for something. Just before my vision went black, I noticed movement on the far side of the room. A door. It was marked with a sign I had never seen before. Rule 0, do not enter. And someone human, was opening it from the other side. Welcome back, Night Owls. This is your safe corner in the dark, where stories crawl out of the shadows and keep you company through the night. If these tales stir something inside you, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Every click, every word you leave behind helps keep our little community of Night Owls alive. You're not just a viewer here, you're part of the story. I never thought I'd end up here, not in a million years. My life was ordinary until the day that letter showed up in my mailbox. It wasn't like the usual white envelopes with windows for bills or the glossy junk mail I normally tossed in the trash. This one was thick, beige, and stamped with a crest I didn't recognize. No return address, just my full name, middle included, written in neat black ink like someone knew me better than I knew myself. I almost threw it away, but something about it made me pause. Maybe it was the weight. It felt heavy, like there was more inside than just paper. I slid it open with the edge of my house key and pulled out a single folded page. At the top was that same strange crest, an eagle clutching something in its talons, not arrows or an olive branch, but a black key. Underneath it read, United States Government Division of Paranormal Operations. The letter welcomed me as a newly recruited operative. I stared at it for what felt like hours, rereading the words until they blurred together. According to the letter, I had been selected based on background checks, psychological profiles, and compatibility with operational needs. The kicker was at the bottom. Your presence is mandatory. Refusal is not an option. I should have called the cops, maybe laughed it off as a prank. But 3 black SUVs pulled up in front of my house that very night. Men in suits got out, their faces stone. They didn't knock. They waited, silent, watching me through the window until I stepped outside. I went with them because some instinct whispered that not going would have been a fatal mistake. That was 6 months ago. Now I sit behind a steel desk in a concrete facility buried so far underground that I haven't seen sunlight in weeks. I work for the Paranormal Division, or as everyone here calls it, the Division. Nobody uses its full name, probably because speaking it out loud makes it too real. We handle the things that shouldn't exist, the things that people dismiss as myths or nightmares. The first thing they drilled into me were the rules. There are a lot of them, and they're carved into plaques on every hallway wall. No one dares ignore them, not if they want to live. Rule 1, never speak to the mirrors after midnight. Rule 2, if you hear knocking from inside a locked room, don't open it. Rule 3, always salute the man in the old uniform, even if you're alone. Rule 4, do not eat the food in the cafeteria on Thursdays. Rule 5, when walking the lower corridors, do not answer if something calls your name. And on they went. Some of them sound ridiculous. Others are worse than ridiculous. They feel like threats carved in stone. At first, I thought it was all a twisted game, maybe psychological conditioning. But then I saw things I can't even put into proper words without feeling my chest tighten. It started with the man in the old uniform. I was leaving my shift late one night, dragging my feet through the sterile halls. That's when I noticed him. An old soldier in a faded World War II uniform, standing at the end of the corridor. His cap was tilted, his boots polished but caked with dried mud. His face was gray and still, but his eyes were alive. They bore into me with a sharpness that cut through every layer of my being. Instinct told me to keep walking, pretend I hadn't seen him. But Rule 3 slammed into my head. Always salute the man in the old uniform, even if you're alone. I froze. My arm felt heavy as I raised it to my temple and saluted. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then slowly his hand rose and returned the gesture. He didn't smile, didn't blink. Just dropped his arm, turned, and vanished into the wall like smoke. I nearly collapsed right there in the hall. The next day, one of the older operatives clapped me on the shoulder. "You saw him," he said, like it wasn't a question. "Good. You followed the rule. If you hadn't, you wouldn't be standing here." He said it so casually, like it was just another line on a checklist. That was the moment I realized the rules weren't guidelines. They were lifelines. As weeks passed, I became used to the routine. Reports, surveillance, containment operations, endless debriefings. But the strangest part wasn't the missions outside, it was what happened inside. The division itself is alive in ways no one will admit. Take the mirrors, for example. They line the restroom walls and the locker rooms, ordinary as any reflection. But after midnight, they shift. I made the mistake once of working late and wandering into the restroom at 12:07. My reflection didn't move with me. It stood perfectly still while I washed my hands. Then it smiled. I didn't. I bolted so fast I almost cracked my head on the door frame. The older operatives warned me never to look at mirrors after midnight. "They're not ours anymore," one of them muttered. The worst incident, though, came during my third month. A new recruit had joined us, fresh-faced, eager, and cocky. He treated the rules like superstitions, jokes to break during downtime. One Thursday, while the rest of us sat in the break room with our packed meals, he strutted into the cafeteria and grabbed a tray. He grinned as he ate the food, mocking us with every bite. By the next morning, his bunk was empty. His things were gone. His name wiped from every roster, every file. When I asked about him, no one acknowledged he had ever existed. But that night, I heard someone screaming down in the lower corridors. I swear it was his voice. The division never talks about what happens to those who break the rules. They don't need to. The silence is enough. My latest assignment is worse than anything before. They told me it's a class red operation, the kind they only assign when everyone else refuses. I'm to accompany a small team in Sublevel 5, an area sealed off since the 70s. No one tells me why it was closed. No one tells me what we're looking for. Just more rules. Rule 27. Do not bring your own light into Sublevel 5. Use only what is provided. Rule 28. If you hear children laughing, turn back immediately. Rule 29. Do not touch the doors marked with red paint. Rule 30. If you see the thing with too many faces, do not let it speak to you. I copied them down word for word, my hands shaking as I did. Tomorrow night we descend into Sublevel 5. Tonight, I sit in my bunk staring at the ceiling, wondering why me. I try to remind myself that maybe, just maybe, this is all an elaborate charade, a test of obedience. But in the silence of the underground, when the air feels too heavy and the walls seem to breathe, I know better. There's something waiting for us down there. Something the rules are barely strong enough to hold back. And I'm terrified that soon I'll find out exactly what it is. The day of the assignment arrived without fanfare, the way death often comes quietly. They woke us at 1900 hours, marched us down to the armory and handed out gear. Not the usual night vision goggles or rifles. No, this time it was older equipment. Lamp-like devices with strange coils, radios that hummed with static even when turned off, and a satchel of chalk sticks. When I asked what the chalk was for, the quartermaster simply said, "Mark your way. Walls shift down there." That was the first real confirmation I'd had that Sublevel 5 wasn't just abandoned, it was alive. There were 5 of us on the team. Miller, the leader, a hard-faced veteran with scars that mapped across his jaw. Daniels, a quiet man who never lifted his eyes when he spoke. Taurus, built like a wall but jittery, his hands trembling even as he strapped on his gear. And then there was me, the rookie who still didn't understand why I'd been dragged into this world. We assembled at the elevator shaft that led to the sealed levels. The steel doors were chained and welded shut, marked with a stenciled warning in faded red, "Authorized personnel only. Do not enter." That alone should have been enough to send us running. Instead, Miller barked orders, and the welds were cut. The air that rushed out was stale and cold, carrying a faint odor of rot, like something had been festering in the dark for decades. "Remember the rules," Miller said, his voice grim. "You break them, you won't come back? Clear?" We all nodded, but my throat was too dry to answer. The elevator creaked as it lowered us into the abyss. The hum of the motor echoed through the shaft, each vibration crawling across my skin. The lamps they'd given us flickered on with a low buzz, casting a pale yellow glow. Not electric light, something older, warmer, but wrong. It didn't feel like it came from bulbs, more like it bled into existence. The doors opened onto a hallway lined with peeling paint and corroded pipes. Everything looked untouched since the 70s, frozen in time. The chalk squeaked under Torres's hand as he drew the first mark on the wall. We moved cautiously, the silence pressing in from all sides. Our footsteps echoed too loud, like the walls were amplifying the sound. After a few minutes, Daniels muttered, "Do you hear that?" We stopped. At first I thought it was just the hum of the lamps, but then I caught it. Faint, distant. The sound of children laughing. "Rule 28, I whispered. Miller's jaw tightened. "We hold position." The laughter grew louder, skittering along the corridor like it was circling us, darting from one wall to another. It wasn't joyful laughter. It was sharp, mocking, layered with too many voices. I pressed my back to the wall, chalk marks behind me glowing faintly in the lamp's light, as if alive themselves. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the laughter stopped. Torres swore under his breath. Miller motioned forward. "Move. Don't look back." We walked for what felt like hours. The chalk marks kept us sane, reassuring us we weren't going in circles. But the walls seemed different every time we glanced back. Paint peeling in new patterns of pipes jutting at odd angles, shadows stretching where no light should reach. That was when we came across the first red door. It stood alone at the end of a side passage, tall and ancient, painted a deep crimson that hadn't faded like the rest of the facility. No handle, no hinges, just a seamless slab of red. Rule 29 screamed in my head, "Do not touch the doors marked with red paint." Torres stepped closer. "What the hell is behind it?" Miller's hand shot out, gripping his arm hard enough to whiten his knuckles. "Don't even think about it. Eyes front." I forced myself to look away, but curiosity clawed at my thoughts. If they sealed this level off, what did they lock behind doors like that? We pressed on, but the air grew heavier the deeper we went. It was like breathing through wet cloth. My chest ached with each inhale, and my ears popped as though the pressure was changing. Then we saw it. At first, I thought it was a shadow, a trick of the flickering lamp. But as we drew closer, its shape became clearer. A figure slumped against the wall, head bowed, arms limp. A person. Daniels approached slowly, raising his lamp. "Looks like one of ours," he murmured. The light revealed a man in a division uniform, though it was decades out of date. His flesh was pale, almost waxy, and stretched thin over his bones. His face, if it could be called that, was wrong. Where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been, there were too many features. A cluster of eyes, dozens, blinking in every direction. Mouths opened and closed soundlessly across his cheeks and forehead. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. Rule 30. If you see the thing with too many faces, do not let it speak to you. Miller shouted, "Turn off the lamps!" We obeyed instantly, plunging into suffocating darkness. My heart pounded in my chest, blood roaring in my ears. In the black, I heard a sound, wet lips parting, a whisper slithering through the corridor. "Stay," it said. The word wasn't spoken with one mouth, but with all of them. Layers of voices, male and female, child and elder, overlapping into a grotesque chorus. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but Miller's hand clamped onto my shoulder. His breath was hot against my ear as he whispered, "Don't answer. Don't move." The whispers grew louder, pleading now. "Don't leave me. I know you. I remember you." Something brushed my arm, clammy and cold. I nearly screamed, but Miller squeezed harder, grounding me, and then silence. We stayed in that blackness for what felt like hours until Miller finally clicked his lamp back on. The corridor was empty. No figure, no eyes, no mouths, just the chalk marks glowing faintly behind us. Torres broke then. He slammed his lamp to the ground and cursed. "What the hell are we doing down here? This place is wrong. We shouldn't be here." Miller grabbed him by the vest and shoved him against the wall. "You think I don't know that? You think I want to be down here? We finish the job or none of us leave." Torres's chest heaved, but he didn't argue again. We pushed forward, though every step felt heavier, like the floor wanted to swallow us. My stomach twisted with dread. I couldn't shake the thought that the thing with too many faces hadn't disappeared. It was still with us, just waiting in the dark where we couldn't see. Finally, we reached a chamber that opened wide compared to the narrow halls. Rusted equipment lined the walls, control panels, computers with cracked screens, and a giant observation window peering into a black pit. "This is it," Miller muttered, "the core." As he moved to the console, I glanced at the window. The pit below seemed endless, but something shifted in the darkness. A ripple, like water disturbed by movement. Then, faintly, I saw shapes rising from the depths. Children, dozens of them, pale and thin, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Their laughter began again, echoing up the pit, filling the chamber with that mocking chorus. Taurus screamed. And that's when everything fell apart. Taurus's scream echoed off the chamber walls, bouncing back in jagged fragments until it felt like the room itself was shrieking. The children's laughter rose in response, higher and sharper, until it pierced the air like broken glass. Miller lunged at Taurus, clamping a hand over his mouth. "Shut it down," he hissed. "Do you want them to come all the way up?" But it was too late. The shapes in the pit shifted. Pale hands gripped the rim of the observation window, long fingers splayed wide. They weren't children, not really. Their faces were stretched wrong, jaws unhinged too far, eyes too luminous. Some had too many teeth, others had no mouths at all, just gaping holes where voices leaked out in cruel laughter. Taurus backed away, stumbling, chalk marks glowing faintly behind him as though mocking his retreat. One of the figures pressed its face against the glass. For a moment I prayed the window would hold, but a thin crack spidered across the surface with a sound like bones splintering. Daniels whispered, "That glass won't hold them." Miller spun toward the console, slamming switches and twisting knobs with frantic precision. "Keep your lamps steady. Do not break formation." The lamps flickered in our hands, buzzing with a sickly hum. Their glow intensified, beams tightening into sharp cones that cut across the chamber. When the light struck the glass, the shape shrieked and recoiled, retreating into the pit's shadows. The crack in the glass sealed itself, knitting closed like flesh healing. For a moment, silence fell again. Taurus collapsed to his knees, gasping, sweat pouring down his face. "We can't do this," he muttered. "We can't fight that. Whatever the hell that was, it's not human." Miller didn't even look up. His hands danced over the console, punching in codes none of us understood. "We're not here to fight. We're here to reset the seals. If we don't, those things won't just haunt Sublevel 5. They'll crawl into every corner of this place, and then the world." The weight of his words settled like ice in my veins. Whatever was imprisoned down here, the rules weren't just to protect us. They were to keep it contained. Daniels finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "How much time do we have?" Miller's face tightened. "Not long. The SEALs have been degrading for decades. That's why they sent us." I wanted to ask why they hadn't sent a larger team, more experienced operatives, anyone but us. But before the words could leave my lips, I heard something new. A voice. It wasn't laughter this time. It was soft, melodic, and heartbreakingly familiar. "Help me." I froze. It was my mother's voice. She had been dead for 5 years. The sound echoed from the corridor we had entered through, faint but undeniable. "Please," the voice pleaded, "don't leave me here." My chest constricted. Logic screamed it couldn't be her, that it was a trick, but the desperation in her tone cut deeper than logic. Daniels caught my arm. "Don't. You know the rule. If it calls your name, don't answer." But it hadn't said my name. Not yet. That thought almost undid me. Taurus stood again, trembling, his eyes wide with raw fear. "We can't stay in this chamber. It's wrong. It's all wrong. I can feel them watching us." He was right. Even though the pit had fallen quiet, the air felt crowded, as if dozens of unseen eyes tracked our every move. Miller slammed one final lever into place, and the console gave a long, grinding groan. The lamps above the observation window flared to life, beams stabbing into the black pit. I heard screeches, dozens of them, echoing away into the abyss. "It's done," Miller said, panting. "The seals reinforced. For now, we move back the way we came." We gathered ourselves, the silence pressing tighter with every second. The corridor outside the chamber looked darker than before, shadows swallowing the faint glow of our lamps. Halfway down the hall, we heard it again. Not laughter this time, not pleading. Footsteps. They followed us, perfectly in sync. When we stopped, they stopped. When we moved, they moved. Taurus snapped. He spun around, lamp raised high, illuminating the corridor behind us. Nothing. Just the chalk marks glowing faintly on the wall. Then the sound came again. Closer. I gritted my teeth. The rules swarmed through my head like bees, but none of them mentioned footsteps. Nothing about what to do when the dark itself seemed to walk with you. "Keep moving," Miller barked. "Do not acknowledge it." We pushed faster, breath ragged, chalk marks flitting past like desperate lifelines. Then we reached a junction we didn't recognize. The chalk mark stopped. Taurus cursed violently, slamming his fist against the wall. This isn't where we came in. The walls, they shifted. The air grew colder. I could see my breath plume in the lamp's glow. The footsteps grew louder now, echoing from every direction. Daniels knelt, fumbling with the satchel of chalk. His hand trembled as he drew a fresh mark on the wall. But as soon as the line was finished, it shimmered and vanished. We all stared. The division had told us the chalk was supposed to be permanent. It was supposed to hold against whatever lived down here. But now the walls were eating it. Miller's face darkened. We're not in control anymore. As if to punctuate his words, a door appeared at the end of the junction. A red door. It hadn't been there before. It pulsed faintly, as though it were alive, the crimson paint glistening wet. My stomach dropped. "Don't touch it," I whispered. Taurus was shaking, his face pale with terror. "We're trapped. The walls are shifting. The chalk won't hold. What choice do we have?" Miller seized him by the vest. "We never open the red doors. You hear me? Never." But even as he said it, the door creaked. It opened on its own. From the darkness inside came a low, wet breathing, like lungs filled with water. Then a voice, jagged and layered with too many tones. "Come in." My body turned rigid. Every instinct screamed to run, but where? The walls were shifting, the chalk dissolving. Behind us, the footsteps grew into a stampede. The red door yawned wider, spilling blackness into the corridor. And then, for the first time since we descended, Miller's composure cracked. His hand dropped from Taurus's vest. His eyes locked on the door, wide and haunted. He whispered one word: "Run." Miller's order snapped us into motion. We bolted down the corridor, lamps bouncing wildly in our hands as shadows twisted around us. The sound behind us grew deafening, footsteps slamming against the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. It was as if the entire level had come alive, chasing us with 100 invisible feet. Taurus stumbled, nearly dropping his lamp. Daniels yanked him up without slowing, his face set in grim determination. We didn't dare look back. Every rule drilled into us screamed that looking would give them power, that acknowledgement meant death. The halls blurred together. Our chalk marks were gone, eaten by shifting walls, leaving us directionless. Each corner led to another, indistinguishable from the last. Still, Miller pressed forward, his instincts guiding him, though his eyes flicked nervously at every turn. Then we hit another dead end. The corridor ended in a sheer wall of corroded steel. Rivets rusted like dried blood. Taurus cursed and slammed his fist against it. "We're finished! We're done!" The footsteps slowed behind us, steadying into a slow, deliberate rhythm. A predator circling prey. Daniels pressed his ear to the wall. "There's space behind it," he whispered. "A passage. We just need." A seam split down the center of the steel wall. With a groan like a dying animal, the slabs pulled apart, revealing another passage. I froze. Miller's jaw clenched. "It's leading us." "No," Taurus stammered. "No, I don't care anymore. We're going through." Before Miller could stop him, Taurus charged into the new corridor. His lamp's glow vanished into the black. We hesitated. The footsteps behind us were closer now, too close. Miller spat a curse, then shoved us forward. "Move. Keep tight." The corridor beyond was narrower, lined with pipes that dripped foul-smelling water onto the floor. The lamps flickered, light struggling to pierce the shadows. My chest tightened with every step, and then I heard it again. My mother's voice. Closer this time, right at my ear. "Don't trust them. They'll leave you. Only I can save you." I bit down hard on my tongue, drawing blood to anchor myself. It wasn't her. It couldn't be. She was gone. This was Sub-Level 5 twisting my memories, wearing her voice like a mask. Taurus's lamp flared ahead, illuminating another chamber. He was already inside, standing frozen in the center. We hurried after him, only to stop cold the moment we crossed the threshold. The chamber was circular, walls lined with mirrors. Dozens of them, floor to ceiling, each framed in tarnished brass. The air was heavy, buzzing with a faint electric hum. My stomach dropped. Rule 1. Never speak to the mirrors after midnight. And it was well past midnight. Taurus stood in the middle, his lamp trembling. His reflection stared back from every angle, dozens of him repeating his movements. Then one reflection smiled when he didn't. Taurus screamed and dropped his lamp. The glass fractured outward like a spider web, but the reflection didn't vanish. It stepped forward. Miller barked, "Lamps up! Stay out of the mirrors!" The reflections multiplied, stepping out of their glass prisons one by one. Their faces were warped versions of ours, eyes too wide, mouths stretched in grotesque grins. They moved in jerky motions, limbs bending wrong. Daniels dragged me back toward the doorway. We can't stay here! But the passage behind us was gone. Where the corridor had been, there was now only another mirror. In it, I saw myself, but older, hollow-eyed, lips moving silently. Taurus bolted toward the opposite wall, but his reflection caught him, hands clawing into his arms. He shrieked as the glass swallowed him whole. His body slammed into the mirror's surface, rippling like water, then disappeared. The reflection grinned and stepped away, leaving no trace. My blood turned to ice. Miller swung his lamp wildly, the light cutting across the chamber. The reflections hissed, recoiling from the glow. Form a circle, he shouted. We obeyed. Lamps raised, beams overlapping to create a fragile barrier of light. The reflections pressed against the edges, hissing and twisting, but they couldn't cross into the glow. Taurus was gone, just like the recruit who had eaten the food on Thursday. Erased, as though he'd never existed. Daniels' voice cracked. We're next, one by one. They'll take us all. Miller's eyes darted around the chamber, calculating. There has to be a way out. Think. The rules. What do the rules say? I forced myself to remember. Mirrors after midnight. Don't speak to them. But nothing about how to escape once you're trapped inside. Then I noticed something strange. Among the mirrors, one frame was empty. No glass, just a gaping hole of darkness. I pointed. There! That's different. Miller's face hardened. Or it's a trap. Everything down here is a trap, Daniel snapped. But it's the only way. The reflections grew bolder, pressing harder against the beams of light. Cracks spidered across the glass, their grins widening. Miller cursed under his breath, then nodded. On three, we move as one, straight into the empty frame. We tightened formation, lamps trembling in our hands. The reflections clawed and hissed, their warped faces leering inches from us. Miller counted 1, 2, 3, we charged. The empty frame swallowed us, plunging us into black. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no air, no ground beneath our feet, just an endless void. Then suddenly, we stumbled out into another corridor. The air was damp, stinking of mold and rot. My knees buckled as I collapsed, gasping, the lamp clattering beside me. Daniels bent over, clutching his stomach, retching onto the floor. Miller steadied himself against the wall, his face pale but determined. Taurus wasn't with us. We didn't speak his name. We knew better. The corridor stretched ahead, lit by faint, pulsating lights embedded in the ceiling. They weren't the division's lamps. They looked organic, like veins glowing faintly through skin. My gut twisted. Where the hell are we? Miller straightened, his jaw set. Not where we're supposed to be. Daniels wiped his mouth, his voice shaking. Are we even still in sub-level 5? Before Miller could answer, the floor beneath us rumbled. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting. A deep guttural groan reverberated through the passage, vibrating in my bones. Then came the whispers. Dozens of voices, layered and overlapping, seeping from the walls themselves. You shouldn't be here. Not yours. Give us your faces. The lamps flickered violently. Shadows writhed across the floor, stretching toward us like grasping hands. Miller raised his lamp higher, his face carved with resolve. Keep moving. Whatever this place is, it wants us to stop. So we don't stop. I forced myself to stand, though my legs trembled. Every step forward felt like walking deeper into the throat of something vast and alive. The whispers followed us, growing louder, angrier. And somewhere behind us, in the dark we had left, Taurus laughed. I didn't sleep after that night. Sleep felt like an invitation, a door I wasn't sure I'd return from if I stepped through. The rules haunted me more than the creatures did. Rule number 7 in particular. If you hear your own name whispered in the dark, don't respond. It's not human calling you. I had scoffed at it before, but now I knew it was real. That whisper, that voice, it had sounded exactly like mine. The next evening, when I reported for duty, the headquarters had a strange hush over it. Agents weren't chatting like they usually did. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved casually. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath. I walked into the operations center, and Director Kane stood at the front of the room, grim as ever. He was rarely seen outside his office, so this was bad. He didn't raise his voice, but every word cut like a knife. He said that one of our senior agents had broken a rule the night before, and the division had lost him. I thought about rule number 9, the one about never running toward a crying child in the hallways. My chest tightened. Kane didn't give details, but I knew it had to be that. I wanted to ask who it was, but the silence in the room warned me not to. Asking questions about the vanished was as good as summoning them back. We were dismissed in silence. I walked to my post in the surveillance wing, still shaken. My hands trembled on the keyboard as I pulled up the feeds. The corridors looked emptier than usual. I kept watching, waiting for something to move where it shouldn't. And then I saw her. A woman, standing in the farthest hallway where no one was allowed to go without clearance. Her back was turned to the camera. Long black hair spilled down her back, and her dress was an unnatural shade of white, glowing faintly under the dim lights. I leaned closer to the screen. She wasn't on the roster. She wasn't supposed to be there. I blinked and she was gone. The feed flickered with static, and then something else appeared. For a split second, the camera showed my own face, staring back at me from inside the hallway. My stomach dropped. I pulled away from the monitor, breathing hard. The screen went black. That night, I considered quitting, walking out. But the rules, the cursed, suffocating rules, kept circling my mind. The very first one was clear. Once you accept this job, you don't quit. If you try, they'll find you. Nobody knew who they were. I had heard rumors of ex-agents turning up dead in their homes, mouths filled with dirt, eyes wide open as if they had seen something that didn't belong in this world. So I stayed. A few hours later, I was assigned to accompany Agent Marrow on patrol of the lower levels. He was older, weary, and he barely spoke. I think silence was his way of surviving. The deeper we went into the building, the colder it became, as though the earth itself rejected us. The walls dripped with condensation. The air was thick. Marrow stopped abruptly and held up his hand. We listened. At first I heard nothing but the hum of the lights. Then, soft footsteps behind us. Too light, too quick to belong to anyone human. They darted back and forth, just out of sight. Rule number 5, Marrow whispered. Don't chase them. Ever. My chest tightened. I wanted to look back, but I kept my eyes fixed forward, just like the rule said. The footsteps grew closer, faster, until it felt like whatever it was right behind me, breathing down my neck. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but I kept walking, matching Marrow's steady pace. Then came the laugh, a child's laugh. It echoed through the hall, high-pitched and hollow, bouncing off the concrete walls. My blood froze. It didn't sound happy. It sounded hungry. I clenched my fists and kept moving. Finally, we reached the stairwell that led back up to the main floor. Marrow pushed open the heavy steel door, and as we stepped inside, the laughter stopped. Silence fell so suddenly it rang in my ears. We climbed without speaking. At the top, I turned back for just a second, and there, at the bottom of the stairwell, was the child. Small, pale with empty black eyes staring up at me. It smiled. The door slammed shut on its own. That night, when I sat back at my desk, I found a note waiting for me. It wasn't typed, wasn't official, just a piece of paper written in hurried, shaking handwriting. It said, "You're already marked. The rules won't save you forever." My hands trembled as I folded the note. I didn't show anyone. I didn't dare. For the first time since I started this job, I realized something that chilled me more than anything else. The rules weren't just about survival. They were a cage. A game being played by something far older and crueler than we could imagine. And sooner or later, I knew I would break one. The headquarters felt different the next night. Too quiet, too still, as though the entire building was waiting for something. I walked through the security gate, and even the guards avoided my eyes. I felt marked, just as the note had warned me. I kept my head down, but deep inside I knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever was waiting for me had already chosen. I reported to the operations room, but the monitors were dead. Rows of black screens stared back at me like empty eyes. The hum of machinery was gone. A silence pressed in, so heavy it felt alive. Director Kane wasn't at his post. None of the senior agents were. For the first time since I started, the division seemed abandoned. And then the intercom clicked on. My own voice came through the speakers. Not a recording. Not something from the past. It was me, speaking in real time. "Come to the sub-basement," it said. "It's time." My throat tightened. I wanted to run, to leave, But rule number one held me in place. Once you accept this job, you don't quit. If you try, they'll find you. Maybe they already had. Maybe they were using me against myself. My legs carried me forward even though my mind screamed to stop. I walked the endless corridors until I reached the elevator. Its doors opened before I pressed a button. Inside, the panel didn't have numbers, just one black button that read beneath. I pressed it. The elevator descended in silence. No cables, no machinery, just falling, endlessly falling, until the doors opened into darkness. The air was wet and heavy, like stepping into the lungs of some massive beast. My flashlight flickered but gave off no light. Still I walked. I don't know how long I wandered down there. Minutes, hours, maybe days. Time didn't matter. Eventually I heard them. Voices. All around me, whispering my name in tones that weren't human. Some sounded like my colleagues, others like children, some like me. They grew louder the further I went, until I stumbled into a vast chamber lit by a faint, pulsing glow. And there they were, the things we had been guarding against all along. Not spirits, not demons, but something older, something that didn't belong in this world. Their forms shifted and crawled deep, sometimes human, sometimes animal, sometimes nothing I recognized at all. They surrounded me, a ring of faces I knew and didn't know, all smiling with empty eyes. At the center stood Director Kane. His face was pale, waxy, stretched too tight over his skull. His voice echoed unnaturally as he spoke. "You followed the rules," he said. "Good. That's how we keep the game going. But the rules don't protect you. They bind you. You're one of us now." I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. My throat was dry. Kane, or whatever wore his face, extended a hand. Behind him, the walls of the chamber pulsed like veins, alive, breathing. The whispers grew deafening, overlapping, pulling me apart piece by piece. My own voice rose among them, louder, clearer. I heard myself whispering from every corner of the chamber, "Join us! Join us! Join us!" And then I understood. The rules weren't there to keep the monsters out. They were there to break us down slowly, to feed us to the thing beneath this place. Every vanished agent, every whispered name, every child's laugh in the dark, it was all the same game. And I was the next piece. Kane stepped closer. His hand touched my shoulder. It was cold, slick, and wrong. I tried to run, but my legs didn't move. My body wasn't mine anymore. The whispers grew inside my skull until they were all I was. The last thought I had was of the rules, written in that damned handbook. I had thought they would save me. But the truth was simple, cruel, and final. The rules don't keep you alive. The rules teach you how to die. Another night, another shadow faced, and you made it through, Night Owls. If this story kept you close to the edge of the dark, remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps our little family of Night Owls grow stronger. Until the next haunting night, keep your lights dim, your hearts brave, and never forget, you're not alone in the dark.